So it's bad news, good news. Bad news for the left, who are crying a river over Israeli hostages, 4 of them being rescued from the middle of a city on the Gaza Strip. Good news, of course, for the Israeli citizens, as well as the nation, who got to embrace their 8-month held captives once again and made it out with their lives, which frankly is a miracle. Because an interesting side note is I listened to an interview on the BBC where they asked the former director of communications for the Israeli military whether or not they should have warned Hamas of their raid. Yes, we're going to tell you that we're after our hostages and that we figured out where they were through great deals of intelligence work and sacrifice. Yes, this is the question that they actually asked. Here it is.
It is appearing to be a high civilian death toll. Would there have been a warning to those civilians for them to get out on time?
For sure, of course, we cannot anticipate Israel to be warning ahead of a raid to extract or to save hostages, because then what the terrorists would do is to kill the hostages, and that would defeat the purpose. So, of course, we cannot expect that.
But when you have leftists like Krystal bemoaning the fact that 200 Palestinian civilians perished in the raid, leaving out the fact, of course, that Hamas, upon hearing that Israeli commandos were in the area and were apparently rescuing somebody, fired using RPGs at them, could that possibly have killed a few people? Of course, this wasn't released in the information given by Krystal or the other leftists who are bemoaning the fact that these Palestinians died. The question is, who is to blame? Do we blame Israel for going out there and saving their hostages that have been held captive for the last 8 months straight, to return them to their families, to free them, to give them lives? They say, rescue 4 but kill 200? Yeah, because Palestinians decided that it would be a good idea to kill 1,200 Israelis and then to take as many hostages as they could, 200 plus of them, for leverage, for torture purposes, because they hate them, because they can. And the fact is that I don't think that Hamas moans the death of their civilians nearly as much as the leftists like Krystal do. Why? Because each death brings them closer to their goal of uniting the world against Israel, because they can play it in the media, because the media doesn't hold them responsible the same way that they didn't when at the initial outset of the war, a rocket struck a hospital, they claimed, and killed 500 people. Turned out it wasn't even close to 500 people, that it struck a parking lot, and that it was in all likelihood a rocket fired by Islamic Jihad or Hamas. But the New York Times breathlessly reports that it was Israel that did it. And also, I'm sure that many people have asked this, but why aren't they bemoaning the fact that so many Yemeni citizens have died in wars? Why don't they bemoan the fact that Muslims died in Syria at the hands of Bashar al-Assad to the tune of 300,000? But when Hamas goes out and kills, murders, just Freddy Krueger nightmare, 1,200 Israelis coming into people's homes early in the morning to slaughter them mercilessly, and then Israel fights back, that suddenly then the world has a problem with the dead Muslims because it's an oppressed narrative of the left that they are trying to grind into oblivion. So now when actual victims get rescued, the left has a huge problem with it. And I have a huge problem with them taking issue, because I celebrate these hostages being freed. And I put the deaths of these souls squarely on the Palestinians. And the fact is that some of these people were actually holding the hostages. These 2 men, a doctor and a journalist for Al Jazeera, had these hostages held in their basement, and they're trying to claim that they've been martyred. Well, I say, good riddance, you evil men, holding hostages for months captive, being cruel, torturing them, possibly raping the women. Of course, Hamas doesn't rape, they'll say. This has been disproven because this is what's circulating around leftist media, and one ear tells the other, and they say, this person said it, this person said it, so it's got to be true. Well, the truth is that if Hamas hadn't taken the hostages, none of these citizens would be dead. F around and find out. Hey, if Germany hadn't tried to exterminate all the Jews, no Germans would have died in the Second World War. Hey, if Japan hadn't invaded America and China and Korea, then all those needless deaths in Japan of school children would never have taken place. And being mad at Israel for rescuing its hostages, it's like, if you steal my car, I'm begging for it back for 8 months. You say, no, 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 what are you going to give me? What are you going to give me? And then I figure out where my car is and I come and forcibly take it. And one of your guard dogs gets run over in the process, and you bemoan the fact that your dog is dead and how cruel I am and that I should be reported to PETA. Well, bye-bye, doggy. Bye-bye. Because that's what these men holding the hostages were. Dogs. Let them die. I'm perfectly fine with that. And I'm perfectly glad to clap as the Israelis are back united with their families and these evildoers are dead. But just remember that this is exactly what Hamas wants, because this expands their ability for the PR narrative using the people on the left, like Krystal, like the New York Times, like the Washington Post. And that's going to go on, but sane people have to call it like it is, and however few people that this video might reach, and please share it if you agree with me, then let's celebrate the captives, the hostages, the people that they're trying to frame as POWs, at least on the left, released, not released, saved by brave Israeli forces. It gives me great pleasure to see them back, and I don't bemoan the deaths of those holding them. And it just shows you the moral culpability of so many on the Gaza Strip that side with Hamas, and that they're not all innocent. And I'm sure that a couple of innocent people actually that did not care for Hamas, or very young children, died. But many of these people have been taught to despise Israel and to hate Jews just for being, because this is the narrative that Hamas has over and over told their citizens and emblazoned into their mind, embedded in there. And glad that they're rescued. And Krystal, you do not see the future very well, because it's not one that is very smilingly upon you. If Hamas were to take over and be able to guide your dress code and what you are allowed to do, say, and where you go. I want everybody to remember that. Hamas is a death cult that does not value its citizens and applauds their death because it gives them narrative talking points that will be expanded by the mainstream leftist media. Peace.